Welcome back to Women Writers in Chinese History. This video briefly introduces the founding of the Tang Dynasty, and then we'll talk about China's only woman emperor, Wu Zetian. First, to review, we've mentioned that China experienced a long period of political division after the fall of the Han Dynasty. The Sui Dynasty reunited the Chinese territory, both the north and the south, in 589. However, similar to the Qin dynasty before, Sui did not last long, and the second emperor Sui Yangdi was traditionally blamed as the tyrannical and extravagant ruler. In particular, he was faulted for the construction of the Grand Canal that connects northern and southern China, as shown on the map here. Historically, the Grand Canal performed an important role in the development of Chinese economy. However, the traditional idea was that Sui Yangdi forced the populace to labor on this project for his personal pleasure trips. That is, heard that women of the South were very beautiful and wanted to visit there in order to witness for himself. Of course, like those stories about the bad last king who brought about a dynasty's downfall, the story of Sui Yangdi's extravagance could have been fabricated or exaggerated by the later dynasty. What we do know is that a general of the name Li Yuan took over power and claimed the title of the emperor in 618. He founded the Tang Dynasty, which lasted up to 907. One important event shortly after the founding of the Tang Dynasty is the coup of the Xuanwu Gate, which was led by Li Shimin, Li Yuan's second son. As a charismatic military leader, Li Shimin performed a crucial role in his father's rise to the imperial throne. However, due to the ritual tradition of passing the throne to the oldest son, Li Yuan appointed Li Shimin's older brother as the crown prince. Discontented, Li Shimin planned the coup in 626 and killed both the crown prince and another brother of his. After the coup, Li Shimin also forced his father to pass the throne to him, and thus became the Tang Dynasty's second emperor. As you can see from this turn of events, Li Shimin was a force to be reckoned with, and he is one of the most famous emperors in Chinese history for the coup, but more so for being a highly competent ruler who paved the foundations of the Tang Dynasty's long-lasting prosperity. For the woman at the center of this lecture, the woman emperor Wu Zetian, Li Shimin was also of utmost importance, since she first entered the imperial palace as his concubine at a relatively low rank. Later, she rose to power by becoming the empress of Li Shimin's son and successor, Gaozong. Before we talk about the legendary Wu Zetian, let us briefly look at some basic features of the Tang civilization. Through military garrisons, diplomacy, and trade, Tang China extended its influences westward into Central Asian regions. The Tang capital Chang'an, today's Xi'an in Shanxi province, was the starting point of the Silk Road. By the Silk Road, exotic goods such as Central Asian spice, wine, and jams entered the markets of the Tang capital Chang'an. There were many foreign merchants there as well, as represented by this figurine from the period. Furthermore, Tang Chang'an was the most populous metropolis in the world during this time, which is the medieval period in European history. It's been estimated that the population in Chang'an reached 1 million or even up to 2 million. Many foreigners, possibly in the number of several hundred thousands, lived in Chang'an for short or long terms. These foreign residents or travelers included those from Central Asia West Asia, as well as Japan and Korea. The flow of people facilitated the exchange of ideas. For instance, this was a time when Japan borrowed many Chinese cultural traditions, from fashion to the written script. Meanwhile, Buddhism found significant developments during the Tang. Xuanzang's famous pilgrimage to India for scriptures, which we mentioned in an earlier lecture, took place during the reign of Taizong Li Shimin. Owing to these extensive connections with the outside world, Tang civilization has been described by modern scholars as cosmopolitan. The Tang Dynasty also sustained a robust martial culture reminiscent of the nomadic traditions of the northern dynasties. For instance, horse polo was a very popular sport during this period, as we can see from many artifacts from this time. Women during the Tang Dynasty were also characterized by a certain robustness in contrast to the more fragile and restrained female images of the later dynasties. One of the most striking visual features of paintings of women from the time is their bold and lavish fashion, as we can see on these illustrations. There was no female foot binding in Tang China. Tang painting and figurines also often show women riding on horsebacks and traveling outside and even playing horse polo. This type of image indicating female mobility would also become rare in the later dynasties. Last but not the least, the Tang Dynasty is known for its galaxy of great poets and the form of classical poetry that matured during the period. Many poems written during the time remain well known in China today. All in all, the Tang Dynasty's image in Chinese cultural memory is a golden age of economic prosperity and literary flowering, characterized by cosmopolitan, robust social customs and far-reaching international influences. Whereas the foundations of the dynasty's achievements could be attributed to second emperor Li Shimin, who reigned over 2 decades after the bloody coup during which he murdered his own brothers, they are also closely related to China's most legendary female historical figure, Wu Zetian, who, as the Empress Dowager, and finally the Emperor, practically ruled Tang China for nearly 5 decades. That is nearly half a century. As a historical figure, Wu Zetian has been shrouded in mystery and controversy. The title of an English biography of hers goes as follows: Wu, the Chinese empress who schemed, seduced, and murdered her way to become a living god. I haven't read this book, and its content may not be as sensational as the title suggests. However, the title itself is indicative of the type of image she has left in the Chinese cultural memory, and in turn in world history, as a woman emperor whose rise to power seems to be both corrupt and miraculous. Here we have a few of Wu Zetian's portraits, but likely they all came from a much later period, probably the Ming Dynasty. Her story has been a fixture on Chinese language TV, and here are a few TV dramas about her from different decades. We'll use images from the most recent TV drama for visuals as we walk through her legendary life. Furthermore, it's been said that she ordered the construction of giant Buddha after her own image. So maybe the Buddhist statue we see here more closely resemble the historical Wu Zetian. As with all the other emperors and empresses in Chinese history, we learn about Wu Zetian's life and deeds primarily through official histories. One caveat we need to keep in mind is that many well-known accounts about her are based on historical records compiled during the Song dynasty in the 11th century, about 4 or 5 centuries after her lifetime. As we have discussed, the Song dynasty was a period when Neo-Confucianism became a dominant intellectual trend among scholar officials, and when gender perspectives became more restrictive. Unsurprisingly, Wu Zetian didn't represent the best type of female image in Neo-Confucian thinking, to say the least. Correspondingly, the historical narratives about her from sources compiled during the Song period are highly negative, full of episodes of dark intrigues and cold-blooded murders. These ideologically filtered accounts were later passed on as authentic facts about her, and are still widely known and widely accepted as true today. Of course, likely the historical Wu Zetian had indeed done some extraordinarily cruel and tyrannical acts when we see them from a modern perspective. However, what's interesting is that some of the most horrific acts ascribed to her, and those given with vivid details, come from Song dynasty historical sources instead of Tang dynasty writings closer to Wu Zetian's lifetime. Let's keep this caveat in mind, and we'll look at a few examples soon. To begin with, what was Wu Zetian's family background, and how did she get the name she's known for now as Wu Zetian? For those of you who are already quite familiar with this name, it may come as a surprise that if you travel back in time and meet this woman emperor face to face, she won't know who you're referring to if you mention the name Wu Zetian. Historically, the term Zetian came from an honorific title she received after she was forced to pass the throne to her son in the final year of her life, the year 705, after a palace coup. The title literally means modeling on heaven, representing her son, the new emperor's ultimate reverence, even after his mother was pressed to abdicate. Yet it was not an actual name she had used, and she passed away in the very year receiving the title. Then what was the woman emperor's actual name? If by actual name we mean the name she received from her parents at birth, then the answer is that we don't know. This situation is not unusual for women from the traditional period, since their birth names are often not recorded in historical sources. The first name of the future woman emperor, as we can find in historical sources, was given by Li Shimin, the Taizong emperor, when she first became his concubine, that is, Wu Mei. The character Mei refers to a young woman's somewhat seductive loveliness. Later, this early name of the woman empress is popularly known as Wu Mei Niang, Wu, the lovely girl. The name Wu Mei blatantly presents the young palace concubine as an object of desire. It seems to be the only name she had even after she became the empress, that is, of the new emperor, Li Shimin's son, Gaozong. Even though, starting from that point, she is usually referred to as Wu Hou, Empress Wu, in historical sources. Finally, many years later, when she was well in her 60s and was in a good place to claim the title of the emperor, Empress Wu, who was once called Wu the lovely girl, gave herself a new name, and for that, she created a new character, Zhao. Empress Wu created this character Zhao by putting together the characters representing the sun, 日, the moon, 月, and the sky or heaven, 空, to designate her ultimate and also very unique mandate of heaven. 日 and 月 in their combination also means brightness or illumination, 明. I would also like to think that the combination of the sun, 日, and the moon, 月, reflects a combination of yang and yin, reflecting her crossing of a fundamental gender boundary to become a female son of heaven. The bottom part of the character Kong is also an interesting choice, since while referring to the sky or heaven, it can also mean the Buddhist principle of emptiness. Wu Zetian had a deep affinity with Buddhism and borrowed ideas from Buddhism to portray herself as a living god. So her new name could connote both the traditional Confucian theory of the mandate of heaven and the Buddhist principles she had promoted. All in all, the transformation of the woman emperor's names from Wu the lovely girl to Wu the son of heaven exemplifies her extraordinary transformation of identity, from being a little plaything for the emperor, as so many other palace women were, to being a living god and the highest authority of the land. Then why did she come to be called Wu Zetian? The popularity of this reference was actually a recent development owing to the feminist movement of the early 20th century. Prior to the modern feminist movement, she has been for the most part referred to as Empress Wu in traditional historical sources, a designation that downplayed and obscured her independent and revolutionary historical position as the woman emperor. Even though the woman emperor had given herself the name Wu Zhao, Zhao is a rare character and might not be as memorable as her title Zetian. Through the feminist movement of the early 20th century, Wu Zetian became the popularly known name to refer to this legendary woman emperor. After this gloss of Wu Zetian's name, let's look at her life. We have mentioned that the political system of the period of division was largely aristocratic, and it was difficult for a commoner to find opportunities at social advancement. However, anticipating Wu Zetian's extraordinary character, her father Wu Shiyu, despite being a commoner, was an entrepreneur of sort and made a fortune as a merchant. Then he made the right political move by becoming a military officer and supporting Li Yuan, the Sui dynasty general who later founded the Tang dynasty. Due to his service to Li Yuan, Wu Shiyu earned an official position after the founding of the Tang dynasty in 618. And Li Yuan appreciated Wu Shiyu so much that he personally arranged his second marriage after the death of his first wife. Wu Shiyu's second wife, as appointed by the emperor, was Madame Yang Shi, who was related to the royal family of the previous dynasty Sui. Madame Yang was highly literate and was a lay Buddhist. She gave birth to 3 daughters. Wu Zetian was the second daughter. Wu Shiyu died in 635, when Wu Zetian was about 11 years old. Madame Yang and her daughters were not treated well by the Wu sons from the first marriage and other relatives. Wu Zetian's relationship to her brothers and her birth family, the Wu family, would become a prominent theme in her political decisions later on. Then how did she become Taizong Li Shimin's concubine? Historical records are vague on this process. What we know is that the emperor heard about her beauty and intelligence and thus fancied her in his palace, as simple as that. Wu Zetian entered the palace at the age of 13 or 14 and was given the rank of Cairen, which was the 5th rank of the 9 ranks in the Tang inner palace. One historical record reports that Madame Yang, Wu Zetian's mother, was extremely sad at the news, since she's well aware how terrible a woman's fate in the inner palace could become. Yet the young Wu Zetian consoled her mother with the following words: "Who knows, it's not my fortune to serve the emperor. Why should you weep like a little child? 见天子，庸之非福，何儿女悲乎?" We may interpret these words as indicating either her adventurous spirit or her naivete. Wu Zetian spent the next 12 years as Taizong's concubine at the 5th rank, never getting a promotion. She didn't get to bear Taizong's child either. The only interesting account about Wu Zetian during this period, one she told her courtiers about after she became the emperor, was her response to Taizong when he told his palace concubines about an intractable horse, which no one could tame. The young Wu Zetian stood out from the crowd and said that she could tame the horse by doing the following. "First, I'll hit it with an iron whip, and then whack its head with an iron mace. If it's still untamed, I'll slit its throat with a dagger." This reply expresses Wu Zetian's tough character, but Taizong was somehow unimpressed, or maybe he was alerted by this answer that might sound unwomanly to him. Other than this short episode, Wu Zetian's life in Taizong's palace seems to be rather uneventful. By Wu Zetian's own account, she practiced calligraphy a lot and aimed at emulating Taizong's style, since the emperor was himself a very good calligrapher. Likely, Wu Zetian worked hard to improve her calligraphy to get the emperor's attention. Wu Zetian was also very well read and loved literature throughout her life. It may not be an exaggeration to say that after she rose to power, she paved the foundations of the golden age of Chinese poetry. We'll look at that later. Yet, back to her life as Taizong's concubine, she failed to receive any special favors from the emperor. However, a life-changing event took place when Taizong fell seriously ill in 649. Wu Zetian, then known as Wu Mei or Wu Cairen according to her palace title, was one of the palace women serving the ailing emperor, and on those occasions, she got the opportunity to encounter the crown prince Li Zhi, the future Gaozong emperor. And we don't know what precisely happened, but she developed a romantic relationship with the crown prince, who was 3 or 4 years younger than her, when the old emperor was dying. Of course, likely their relationship was kept a secret during the time, but not anymore a few years later. After Taizong emperor's death in 649, Li Zhi became the new emperor, but Wu Zetian was sent to a Buddhist nunnery. By the custom of the town palace during the time, all palace concubines who did not bear a child were sent to the nunnery to maintain their chastity. The young Wu Zetian seems to be in a hopeless place, destined to spend the rest of her life as a nun against her wishes, if not for the romance she had had previously with the new emperor. Yet the new emperor already had an empress and some favorite consorts in the palace. Moreover, it would be such a scandal if he married his father's concubine as a consort. All odds were against Wu Zetian. Yet the special charms she held over the emperor and some special circumstances made the impossible possible. The rekindling of Wu Zetian's love with the new emperor took place in a very public manner in 650, when Li Zhi visited the nunnery to pray for the spirit of his deceased father. Ironically, he was witnessed by many to hold hands with a nun in the temple, Wu Zetian, his father's former concubine, and both were having tears in their eyes. This dramatic detail is recorded in a source from the Tang period, so it's likely true. Even more extraordinarily, after having heard the news, Gaozong's wife Empress Wang made the decision to invite the nun into the palace as the emperor's consort. Empress Wang came from a powerful aristocratic lineage and was educated in the Confucian classics. Here she demonstrated the behavior characterized by the classics as the virtue of the consort by not being jealous. However, Empress Wang's actual motive was to use the emperor's interest in this nun to suppress the influence of her palace rival, consort Xiao Shufei, who was then enjoying the emperor's favors more than she did. Clearly, she didn't anticipate that Wu Zetian, a concubine of the previous emperor and from a commoner's family, could pose a serious threat to her. But she couldn't be more wrong on that. Re-entering the palace in 651 as the new emperor's consort, Wu Zetian received the rank of Zhao Yi. It's the second rank in the inner palace, much higher than the fifth rank she was given as Taizong's concubine. It was nevertheless lower than the first rank title of consort Xiao, and certainly lower than the empress herself. Wu Zetian was then 27, already old by traditional standards, but her life just got started. Wu Zetian gave birth to a son soon after she entered the palace. At first, she served both the emperor and the empress with diligence, and it seems that she used her previous knowledge about the inner palace to develop a circle of affiliates and an information network by befriending palace maids and eunuchs. She was also firmly holding the emperor's affections, coming to enjoy his favors almost exclusively. Witnessing that, Empress Wang began to see Wu Zetian as a threat, and the two women gradually became enemies rather than friends. The true rift between Wu Zetian and Empress Wang took place when Wu Zetian accused the empress of murdering her newborn daughter in 654. According to historical sources from the Tang period, Empress Wang visited Wu Zetian and played with the baby for a while. Later, the baby girl was found to be dead, and Wu accused the empress of murder. In historical records from the Song period, several centuries later during the rise of Neo-Confucianism, however, we start to witness the narrative that Wu murdered her own daughter in order to slander the empress. This account was passed down to later generations and is still widely accepted as true today. What then actually happened? I'm not sure. On the one hand, we can almost certainly rule out the possibility that Empress Wang murdered Wu Zetian's daughter, since such a reckless, cruel act wouldn't make any sense for her politically. Moreover, a daughter wouldn't pose any threat to the order of imperial succession. As to whether Wu Zetian murdered her own daughter in order to slander Empress Wang, I'm still debating on that question. We know that crib death could happen to newborn babies, and might be the case that Wu Zetian used this tragedy in her attempt to topple the empress. On the other hand, the baby girl's death did seem politically convenient to her, and she was certainly capable of cold-blooded deeds, as we can tell from some reasonably authentic records about her. Some modern writers who have speculated on the issue have argued that if she didn't take such an extreme step, both she and her daughter would perish anyway in the vicious struggles of the inner palace. Many decades later, after she secured her power, Wu Zetian conducted elaborate memorial rituals for this daughter who died as an infant. Was it because she's guilty of something? A lot is left to our imagination. So what's your take on the issue? I've created an anonymous poll with questions on some historical mysteries related to the materials of this week, including the mystery of Wu Zetian's daughter's death. I look forward to your feedback there. Eventually, what brought on Empress Wang in 655, the year after Wu Zetian's daughter's death, was not this accusation of murder, but the accusation that she attempted at poisoning the emperor. This time the charge was made by the emperor himself, without much evidence. What seemed to happen was that the emperor had been in a tug-of-war for power with aristocratic families represented by Empress Wang's lineage. So in addition to his strong attraction to Wu Zetian in terms of personal feelings, he also very much appreciated her assistance in this political struggle. The emperor had been contemplating at replacing Empress Wang with Wu Zetian both for his personal preference and for making a political statement, that is, to assert his authority over the aristocratic clans and courtiers who often inserted themselves into his decisions. The emperor's accusation and demotion of Empress Wang were an outcome of these developments. Wu Zetian in turn became the new empress. During the later dynasties, this transformation would have been unimaginable, since after the rise of Neo-Confucianism during the Song dynasty, this action of marrying one's father's concubine, not to mention making her the empress, would be perceived by the ministers as incestuous and completely unacceptable. During the Tang period, this marriage was viewed as scandalous by many, but not to the extent of being thoroughly out of the question. Furthermore, since there were important political motives behind the emperor's decision, he used this occasion to crack down several courtiers from influential aristocratic lineages, including his own uncle, and promoted officials of commoner backgrounds who had supported Wu Zetian's claim to the title of the empress. After Wu Zetian became the new empress, Empress Wang and her other palace rival consort Xiao were swiftly sent to the court palace, and not long afterwards they were executed by the order of the new empress. Historical records again diverge on this account. Tang sources report that they were strangled to death. It's of course terrible enough, but not as hair-raising as a well-known story that began to emerge in sources from the Song period. According to this account from the Song dynasty, she had the former empress and concubine Xiao both flogged 100 times, their arms and legs cut off, and their truncated bodies thrown into wine vats, saying, "May the bones of these sluts drink themselves into a stupor." Within a few days, both women were dead. Filled with vivid and dramatic details, this narrative looks like an eyewitness account and has often been taken as true, and as indicating Wu Zetian's dark, somewhat perverted personality. It's also included in Redbrush without any caveats. However, whereas I'm on the fence about Wu Zetian's murder of her own daughter, I'm very doubtful of the cruelty ascribed to her in this particular narrative. First of all, it's obviously modeled on the human swine incident committed by Empress Lu of the Han Dynasty, an incident emblematic of traditional perceptions of the inhumanity embodied by a powerful woman. In Empress Lu's case, the historical record on the human swine is more likely true, since it's roughly contemporaneous with her time, and there was the consequence of her son, the emperor's mental disorder after he had witnessed the scene. In Wu Zetian's case, one important argument against her commitment of the horrific torture, in my opinion, is that She is not yet fully in power at this point, and still very much dependent on the sponsorship of her husband, Emperor Gaozong. How would Gaozong feel if she indeed tortured the empress and the consort to death in this gruesome, shocking manner? As we'll see, there were moments when the emperor felt the threats of Wu's influences and considered demoting her. If she indeed tortured her palace rivals, the emperor's previous wife and consort, in this excessive manner reminiscent of the past Empress Lu, wouldn't he be more reserved in his feelings toward her and in his decision of bestowing more administrative power on her? Let's keep this caveat in mind and continue to witness Wu Zetian, now Empress Wu's rise to power. One unusual circumstance that contributed to her influence was that Emperor Gaozong suffered from a chronic disease that's likely severe hypertension in modern medical terms. Attacked by bouts of dizziness, he could no longer manage the duties of the emperor on his own. Therefore, starting in 660, he invited his empress, who had been assisting him in a very competent manner throughout the years past, to formally receive courtiers and make decisions regarding the imperial government. In 1664, however, the emperor started to suspect that the empress had become too powerful and contemplated on demoting her. Yet, based on the extensive information network she had begun to develop when she first re-entered the palace, Empress Wu learned about the plot and successfully derailed it. In consequence, a number of officials and their clans were executed for having encouraged the emperor on this idea against the empress. A woman writer will soon discuss, Shangguan Wan-er came from one of those clans destroyed by Empress Wu. However, later she was employed by the empress and became her most trusted secretary. We'll talk about that story later. In 674, the solidification of Empress Wu's power can be seen by her new title, the Celestial Empress, Tianhou, in parallel to the emperor's title, the Celestial Emperor, Tianhuang. She was also called alongside the emperor as the two sovereigns, Ershun. To my knowledge, no other empresses, even those who controlled court politics, had ever had these types of titles that suggest an equal relationship to the emperor. The title of the Celestial Empress, Tianhou, reflects Wu Zetian's ambition to claim the mandate of heaven, even as a woman. What's also extraordinary was that, as the empress, in 666, Wu Zetian accompanied the emperor to conduct the sacred ritual known as Fengshan at Mount Tai, which we have introduced in an earlier lecture as the most sacred mountain in China, revered in both the Confucian and Taoist traditions. The summit of the mountain was believed to embody the highest divine will, and imperial rituals performed there were indications of the prosperity of the dynasty and the supreme achievements of the Son of Heaven. Prior to Wu Zetian, only 4 emperors in Chinese history had ever conducted this elaborate ritual. The first emperor of the Qing dynasty, Emperor Wu of the Han dynasty, one of the most powerful rulers in Chinese history, Emperor Guangwu, who founded the Eastern Han, and Emperor Sui Wen, who established the Sui dynasty and reunified China after a long period of division. After Wu Zetian, we also only had 4 emperors who conducted this ritual: Emperor Xuanzong of the Tang, Emperor Zhenzong of the Song, and Emperor Kangxi and Qianlong of the Qing dynasty. With the exception of Zhenzong of the Song dynasty, all the other emperors participating in the ceremony embody the apex of their dynasty's prosperity and power. Wu Zetian was the only woman to be present in this sacred ritual throughout Chinese history. In all the other Fengshan rituals, Empresses were disallowed since they couldn't reveal themselves at such a public occasion. Wu Zetian, however, broke this rule as the only empress who participated in the Fengshan and had a prominent role in it. 30 years later, in 696, she would conduct this ritual again as the emperor herself. Due to the length of this presentation, we'll take a break here. Please first finish the quiz below and watch the next video to continue with Wu Zetian's legendary life.